In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaiah Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaiah Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and just like any other time, we have another powerhouse. Yes, a powerhouse show for you all, and an amazing guest today. Man, when you think about pressure and when it hits, leadership can really be exposed. And I'm not just talking about the boardroom. It can be exposed in real moments. And our guest today, Mark Andrew, man, I got a chance to preview his book. And the phrase, let's just say, "it's not my job," doesn't really work all the time, especially as a firefighter. Sometimes you're on the scene and there's people counting on you. So it's not, at that point, it can be survival. So it's very important when we think about leadership in this episode. This is real life stories, and he's sharing this with us, wisdom, because this also can work in the corporate office as well. So first and foremost, to Mark Andrew, fire captain, I want to say thank you for being on the show today. How you doing, man?
Doing very good, Shemaiah. This is a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the intro.
Yes, sir. I mean, I didn't do it justice because, like I always say, I got so many great guests that their bio is like almost 45 minutes long. I had to cut it to like 30 seconds. So I appreciate you doing all the great work in your career. So my first question is, kind of tell us what inspired you to be a firefighter, because I want to kind of learn just about what was the beginning like for you in your career.
Very common story. My dad was a firefighter, coincidentally for the same department, and it happens to be the city that I grew up in. And in the 90s, when I was applying, there was a very competitive job applicant pool. At the time when I started, they only really wanted basic EMT. They would send you to an academy. Most people went and got the fire academy themselves by going to a community college or a trade school. And so academy and basic EMT, and it wasn't really all that hard to get into the job applicant pool. So we would show up at it'd be a gymnasium filled with 800 people applying for one job. And as the years went through all of that, it's now a lot different. Less young people are going into the field, less young people are going into the labor sector, and the job requirements have gotten a lot harder. You now need a paramedic license, which is a couple of years. So you're really looking now at a 3 to 4 year commitment of training and education to get the job. So when I was applying for the job, it was just super competitive, and I would have taken the job anywhere just to get my career started. And coincidentally, it was my father's department was the first place that called me, but that still took about 7 years of applying.
I'm glad I asked that question because it sets the tone, because you have a book that you been able to write for our readers and for our audience to go check out, and that is Through the Heat: Essential Leadership Lessons from the Firehouse to the Corporate World. With all the funny stories, I mean, to me, I'm a comedy guy, so I like to laugh. I'm not sure that was your focal point to make me laugh, but I was previewing the book.
Oh, no, it was.
Okay, good, because I don't feel bad now, because I'm like, man, some of this is hilarious. So without spilling too much of the beans in the book, what's some of the funny moments that you started to catch during on the job? Because the one that starts from the very beginning of you on scene and someone was being timid to make a decision, and it's like, hey, there's an actual situation happening right now. We can't have this timidness.
Yes, and I absolutely am aware of the humor involved in telling that anecdote years and years afterwards. What's interesting about it is that it absolutely wasn't funny in the moment. It was a shocking display of timid leadership and the effect that can have on not only the operation, but the crew's mindset, the crew's opinion of you going forward. And so while the story is very humorous now, it's something I wanted to highlight as a leadership failure. And I certainly don't hold a grudge against that officer for being timid in the moment. I think it was a byproduct of just the way he was brought up through the system. He was probably micromanaged from day one, and that was all he knew. He had bosses that would browbeat him if there was ever a mistake. So he was trained to just be afraid. And I was able to look at that moment of timidness where we've got a semi-truck burning and we can't make a decision. And we're waiting on this guy to start making phone calls. And I knew right in the moment, I'm going to do it differently if ever given the chance.
You look at how leadership is in your field it could be a life and death situation. What's some of the moments or a moment you can think of that made you say, you know what, I never want to lead like this?
Yes. There were a few of them. One really good example was we had an administrative task delegated to the station lieutenant. And so he delegates it to me, which is totally fine. I needed to start learning these administrative tasks, and we're setting up these schedules and vacation hours and other types of time off. And the schedule ended up getting messed up. We couldn't figure out what happened. And then two people put in for the same day off, and then one guy's got to get denied. And so as they're all arguing, we figured out, this was an issue with the way this computer is saving the data, because it was before Google Docs and shared servers and clouds. And so we're trying to save to hard drives and upload and export. And we finally figured out the problem. Unfortunately, the big chief of our day, just the chief of our shift, wasn't as optimistic as I was that we found a solution. He was upset that the problem happened in any way. So he calls to the fire station, and the lieutenant answers, and he just starts yelling. And the lieutenant goes, "Oh, yeah, just a minute. Yeah, here he is." And he hands the phone to me. And I look, I said, "What the?" And I could hear the chief yelling through the earpiece. I go, "Yes, sir." "Oh, of course, sir. Very sorry, sir. Sir. Very sorry. Won't happen again, sir." And then I covered up the phone. I just go, "Jerry, what the hell do you think you're doing?" He goes, "What are you talking about? This is your mistake." "It's the chain of command. You're supposed to be taking this phone call." And he goes, "Why would I do that?" And I said, "Oh my God, this is, yes, sir. Very sorry, sir. And I'm just sitting there right in the moment saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's not stepping forward and taking the blame for this. If I'm ever an officer and this happens, I take that phone call. I will never, ever pass the phone to a junior guy and let him take the boss's wrath. The boss gives me the wrath. And then if it's warranted, I'll pass it down to them. And if not, then I'm just going to absorb it."
You have quotes throughout your book that I really appreciate because, I studied philosophy in University of Toledo, go Rockets. But when you think about how it's beyond that, because you don't just use quotes, you actually talk about it's beyond those words that we read in books and those great thoughts. It's action, how we lead by example. You have stories of sometimes when crews on a call and there's stuff that needs to be done, washing dishes or doing stuff around, you don't leave that for them when they come back. Kind of touch that on the audience as far as leading by example.
I've always thought that we have it good in the fire service because we get to live in that station for 24 hours. You intimately get to know the people you're working with. You know their strengths, weaknesses, tendencies, and you get to work with them in non-emergent situations. So unlike in police, probably a little bit more like the military because you're at the base for possibly years before deployments, we have daily tasks and we have daily trainings, and sometimes a special project will show up. And so we can tackle those as a team. And then the senior guys could lead the junior guys in in managing this task or assembling this thing or fixing this broken thing. And so we, on a day-to-day basis, have to just do non-emergent things and do it as a team. And so if I'm participating in that as the boss, it shows them that these tasks are important. That doesn't mean that I got to be mopping the floors all day long, but if my work is done, there's nothing wrong with me pitching in and being a team member. If my work is pulling me away, then I'll go do my job because I'm paid to be the station officer, and sometimes things come up. But I found that does lay a groundwork for when we are on an emergent scene, that it's now natural for me to then take a part of being a team member and being a leader of a crew. So if we're at a fire, I'm going to be inside the fire with my crew, crawling along with them. I'll be looking out for hazards and having their back for safety so they could focus on their tasks of searching for people or working the hose nozzle. But it's all laid with the groundwork of I'm going to be with them. I'm not going to ask them to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself.
You also highlight on being able to make decisions and execute, because you give examples that if you have someone give someone an order to do something, you don't need them to spell out what they're going to do in steps. You just need them to actually do the job. So kind of touch on that. How important is it for safety and just for having a successful call for your crew to actually execute on decisions and not spill out the whole world of what they're going to do in steps?
Absolutely. And that was a key thing that me and my peers talked about coming up the ranks, is we liked the officers that were active with training at the station level, not the officers that would micromanage us. And so I made a decision early on if I'm lucky enough to become a lieutenant someday, we're going to have regular training and we're going to practice not only on the individual tools or working with your gear, but just on the procedures and the deployments. We could do tabletop exercises. We could talk about the order of which we would like things done based on which rig you're on for that day. So when we get to a fire, they would already know, for the most part, what the objectives are. So if we got a fire, they would know, hey, the person on the first engine is going to pull the hose off the truck while I'm walking around checking all four sides of the house. Whereas the people on the ambulance are going to know, I've got to go up and I've got to force that door open. The people on the first driving ladder truck are going to be setting up ladders in case we need to access windows or get on the roof for anything. And so with training and preparation, they could just go to work without me having to say, hey, I need you on the roof. I need you to go grab the flathead axe, the 24-foot ladder, the 16-foot ladder. I want it placed over here. I want it at this angle. I want you to go up with this person. I want you to go 6 feet up and then go to the right, and then I cut a hole 10 feet in here. I could just say the words, hey, go take care of the roof. And then I could walk away and know that it's going to be done, because it's a thing we dealt with months to years ahead of time with that daily training.
And follow up on that, I believe I read part too that there's an example, I believe during the pandemic, we had to be resourceful and understand that there are times when you're limited with resources and you have to make the most of what you have. How important is it for them to take that mindset and just based on the experience with the pandemic, understanding that you gotta have the ability to move quickly and let your training kick in versus, man, okay, what do you want me to do, Jungle Book? I don't know. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because dealing with the initial stages of the pandemic not only provided that as a challenge, it actually provided some opportunities for us as a crew to bond, because I not only want them to follow the medical procedures and medical procedures that were sometimes changing every other day. Safety recommendations were changing, cleaning recommendations were changing. And so every week or so, we would get a new update from the CDC or the State Department of Health on how they want us to decon afterwards. And so I found it best to just stay on it every day. Every day we're going to sit down and debrief on some calls. Every day we're going to talk about what parts of the equipment are working well. What are some of the struggles with the equipment? What suggestions can we make going forward? And so by being an active boss and staying on top of it, we were able to really, I think, tackle the pandemic the best possible way. Also, being active like that gave the crew a chance to let them know that their boss also cares. Because what I didn't want the pandemic to do was separate all of us to where I'm just going to stay on this half of the building, they could stay on their half of the building, and then they can go on their medical runs, and I'm just going to talk to them via email or whatever as I'm following up on their computer reports. I wanted to be out in the ambulance and see the equipment they dealt with. What was the PPE they were wearing? How's it fitting? How do they wash the PPE afterwards? How many uses can you get out of it? So I could stay up on that. So then if issues came up, I could be their advocate with the EMS division and the fire chiefs division.
Once again, listen, I Am Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, Mark Andrew. And we're talking about his book that you can get a copy of it. It's something that I think you're going to get something out of it. It's Through the Heat, Essential Leadership Lessons from the Firehouse to Corporate World. And once again, I apologize for cutting you off. I had a little delay there. But my next question, you kind of touched on it already, but I was going to ask you next is, when you think about the difference between commanding and inspiring your crew, what does a leader need to know the difference between the two when they're giving orders to the people?
For me, the difference all started before the call. It all started with the groundwork and the foundation you were building the team up at the fire station with your training, with your day-to-day tasks, with your follow-ups on their daily runs, their non-emergent runs, the medium-level emergencies, and following up and debriefing and staying on top of that showed them that I cared. I cared how the mundane parts of the job were going just as much as I care how the emergent parts of the job are going. So I always wanted to know how they were doing, what was working, where do they need some support, do they need any other resources? And I found that inspired them to want to be better. So when we got to runs, they were then putting in the work to be good at their jobs so they could perform at a high level without me, once again, having to say, you grab some splints and you grab some bandages and you grab the EKG machine and I could just say, go. And they already knew their jobs. So inspiring them really was just giving them the resources and opportunity to do the good work that I already knew they could do, and then getting out of the way.
In the book, you mentioned that trust isn't automatic. It's something that takes time to be developed and earned. So what's the fastest way from your experience for leaders to lose their crew, their ability for the crew to trust them?
One of the ones I've seen the most is the boss letting the junior people take the blame for mistakes. If a mistake happens on a field or in the field on a call, the boss should be able to go to his boss or her boss and say, I got this. We're going to train up on it. I know exactly what went wrong. I could handle this. And then if it's an egregious thing and sometimes things have to get documented, that's fine. But the crew could see that you are sticking up for them. The boss that just says, oh, I didn't know this was going on, let's talk to that guy. That's where those bosses lose the trust, because then they feel like they're left holding the bag. One, they didn't get the training to know what to do in a pinch. And when they had to make a snap decision, they're now left carrying the weight of whether that decision was right or wrong. And so when the boss steps up and takes that blame, I think is one of the best ways to build trust, because I've seen when it doesn't happen, those crews just never trust that boss again. Yeah,
great example in your book when you wrote about a section of example of a crew kind of doing their own thing because the boss was kind of locked up in their office they were doing for a whole year, and they come back and it's like, hey, why are you guys doing it like this? And they're like, well, we kind of just had to make it happen. I mean, you were kind of in my head, so we had to make our own decisions, if you will. What effects does that do to morale in that type of high, intense, environment?
I've always seen it as a morale killer because then the crew not only isn't getting the direction they need, they have to go through their day-to-day 911 calls with the doubt in their head to whether they're doing it right or not, because nobody's following up, nobody's providing them guidance. They've got their basic training. However, sometimes you got to make quick decisions, whether it's I'm going to pass this closest hospital and go to that specialty center, or I'm going to take this person in this age group to the pediatric center, not the closer main hospital. I'm going to manage the airway this way instead of that way. And so then they have to go through their day-to-day career always wondering, boy, what happens if I mess up? Because they now know that their boss hasn't laid that foundation, hasn't been present, and hasn't been building them up for months to years.
I know we are running out of time, about 5 minutes into this. Once again, talking to our special guest, Mark Andrew. Real quick, when you think about young people today in the workplace, I mean, it's no stranger. A lot of times people are worried about, do they want to be here? Do they have the same work ethic as they did back in the day? From your own experience, what are some things that leaders are doing with the younger people to keep them not just engaged, but excited about the job?
Thankfully for us, I would say 99% of the people that get into being a firefighter, paramedic in an urban city with a 24-hour work schedule do it because it's a passion of theirs. They really, really want to. It is exceedingly rare we get somebody who is just trying it out and they're not sure if this is what they want to do. So we've already got that passion for the career field built in. That being said, we are hiring different people nowadays, and it's not a good or a bad thing, but it has definitely changed the way managers have to lead people. And if I was to look at the fire service 40 years ago, half the people did 4 years in the military, went and got a basic EMT license and just got hired. And then we would just do whatever training, and then it would be yes, sir, no, sir. And you could just yell at them and they would respond. Nowadays, we're pulling younger kids in that are super smart and could have gone to med school if they wanted, could have became lawyers if they wanted, but they want to work in an exciting career field. We're pulling kids that are really smart with computers. We're sometimes pulling kids in now that haven't worked in the labor sector before or never played sports growing up. So we've got people that are super book smart, but when they come on, they say, hey, can I work out on the job? Absolutely. We'll even provide you a fitness program because that's where this person needs their first year training to be. And it's not a good or a bad thing. There's been some incredible young people we've hired that are incredibly bright, but it just takes a present leader to see what the needs are of the crew. And then you could adapt your training for them rather than just rely on the old drill sergeant. I'm just going to yell at you, and if I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you stuff. That doesn't work anymore because in this job market, these kids, with the way a lot of our union contracts are set up, they could just go to another department and maintain seniority or pension benefits. So if I don't provide them what they need to be a fulfilled employee, they could easily go somewhere else.
Once again, been talking to Mark Andrew, and get a copy of his book, Leading Through the Heat, Essential Leadership Lessons from the Firehouse to the Corporate World. Let you have the floor in the last couple of minutes. What do you hope people will take away from your book? And there's additional resources or updates that they can follow online. How can they do so?
I post them on Twitter it's at the Conversat. I have a podcast called The Conversation. And then I'm on Instagram, Mark DBN Fire, and just post inspirational leadership quotes. And the book itself is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Leading Through the Heat. And what I hope people get out of it is just the ability to make workplaces better. So when you leave a career field, hopefully you're leaving it better than you found it.
Well, with that mic drop, I want to say to our guest, Mark Andrew, like always, thank you for your time.
In times like these, we all need a word of encouragement. From pastor and best-selling author Max Lucado comes the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast. With over 40 years of ministry and more than 145 million books sold in 50 languages, Max shares the greatest story ever told, the living Savior who brings hope for a lifetime. Through rich biblical insight, heartfelt storytelling, you'll be reminded that God is always near, always for you, and always in you. Listen to the Max Lucado Encouraging Word podcast, where hope meets your day. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.